Well, hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Dan John from the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. That's a long introduction by itself. It's episode 160, and I have nothing really exciting to tell you about episode 160, except, as always, I'm happy to answer each and every question you have. Just send them to me at podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I always find it interesting when people will post on all the sites. How do you contact the podcast? You contact the podcast by sending your questions to podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. And maybe people are missing that somehow, but I'm still answering the same question. Podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I'm deep into week number 3 of the velocity diet as I say this. I had a nice weigh-in today. Again, I don't recommend anything I do. I don't necessarily recommend, but I always say this. And I don't know if everybody in the industry does this, but I would never recommend something to you that I haven't tried and I haven't done. It's just something that's important to me. So I'm doing the velocity diet. It's the new one, the 4.0 version. It's much easier. It's 4 protein shakes a day. My daughter Lindsay is doing it with me, which, maybe is not a good idea for a family, and she came up with kind of a nice little variation that I shared on the forums. Her idea is to have that one meal a little bit earlier. So you go protein shake, and then a protein shake, and then the one meal protein shake. Again, I'm not recommending this. I'm only doing it for 28 days. I'm doing it for good reasons. Been going through a lot in the last little bit, and this brings me to a point I wanted to make before I got going too far. But every so often, it looks like it's about every 15 years, I used to think I could do this every year, and then later I thought maybe every couple of years, and now I think every 15 years, to do what most of you think. And when I say most of you, it's what I get from when I'm at parties and things. I'm doing a hard diet and a hard exercise program at the same time. I'm doing Dave Turner's peaking program. I'm well into it. This week was a really heavy week. Next week has a heavy Wednesday pull front squat day. Next week's total, which is Friday, isn't so bad. This is a snatch, clean and jerk, front squat, and pulls program, Olympic lifting program. I have to remind myself that not everyone who listens knows the Olympic lifts. But so I'm doing a very hard program while doing a very hard diet at the same time. That's hard to do. Hard is hard. What brings this to me, and I had something happen the other day on the 18th of August. My good friend John Powell died. John, and I've written a lot about John in all my books. When I was a sophomore in high school, he had just gotten back from the Olympic Games. We threw in a track meet together. I was just a sophomore in high school. I'm not sure I weighed 130 pounds yet. And so I was 59 kilos for my international listeners. Later, it's interesting to think that just 3 years later, I'd weigh 105 kilos, 231. And after I threw 108.3 with the high school discus, which isn't extraordinary, but it doesn't matter. Because after, John just worked with me, and he worked with me for a while. And he told me a couple things. I didn't fully understand everything. Of course, when you're talking to an Olympian, and, I'd probably only had, 15, 20 meets under my belt at the time. And that's back when I used to lift in my back porch with my mom and dad drinking coffee at the kitchen table. And I would do incline bench and what I thought were squats and what I thought were deadlifts and what I thought were cleans. And so I didn't have a lot of experience, but the most important thing I learned is that you're never too busy to help somebody. And John was always that way. Literally 20 years later, I reached out to him, and I went to his discus camp. He later offered me the head coaching position there, which it was an honor, and I did that literally through the bulk of my children's lives. I mean, some of their best memories are of discus camp, which makes me very happy. It was like our annual, I was not very rich at the time, so that was their annual vacation, going with Daddy, so Daddy could coach the discus all day. And then later, of course, they both became throwers, which is kind of fun. John died. He had, about a month or so ago, he had a massive kidney infection. And then it was just and that was taken care of. And I don't know the exact, I mean, why do people die and why do people live? That's not our topic for a podcast, but there's a couple things I want you to know about John, and I want you to keep in mind. John was somebody who could talk to a Zen master, talk to a martial artist, read Dale Carnegie, no matter how the book is. He would look at a magazine and see a picture, and his mind would turn that into a way to improve his throwing or his life. I always joke that going with his friend, Brian Oldfield, a great shot putter, if you went to any kind of hardware store with either of those two guys, by the time you left, you had bought something that would somehow make us throw better or whatever. So John and Brian, who were best friends, they both had this amazing creative mind. I referenced John Cleese, the member of Monty Python, for I think he has a YouTube video, and it's called his fights with wokeness or something like that. But really, it's about creativity, and creativity is a tough thing, and there are people who have creativity and some don't. And John was a creative person. Second, John was a contrarian. Contrarian means a lot of things. I wrote a book. It's on my website. It's called A Contrarian Approach to Discus Throw. I wrote it in 2002, which is 20 years ago. Really 23 if you really add it up. And it's funny because I can pick that up right now and go, yeah, that's still right. But the idea of what we were doing is the mistake I see when I see people teach the discus, the shot, the javelin, American football, soccer, basketball, is that they always go to I got to be careful how I say this. We would teach the discus without the discus. We would teach the most important aspects of making the implement go far, and we would ingrain those in. We didn't have a bunch of kids standing in line so they could take one standing throw. They go to the back of the line. The next kid takes a standing throw. He goes, and so, my athletes turn 500 to 1,000 times a day. And our competition, well, if they do turn, the discus turn, they do 5 or 6. I mean, we're going to be a little bit better, just by the volume. And it's got all the ideas, but the idea of contrarian is if everyone's going left, stop for a moment and say to yourself, maybe I should go to the right. And if everyone's going to the right, stop for a moment and say, well, maybe I should go to the left. I try to be contrarian in about everything I do. And not necessarily, that's an overstatement, but I often try to embrace contrarianism to remind myself that there may be a very easy way to do something, and the easiest way to do it is to be a little bit different. When I was in high school, I wrote this thing for Mrs. Himes' English class when she asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote, I want to do something different, something unique. And that's how I finished off my little essay. And I later put that into my journal. And my good friend Paul Northway, my national champion, 1996, who's now a professor, he saw that quote. He goes, you wrote that, didn't you? You said that, huh? I go, yeah. I go, how do you know? He goes, because that's who you are. And I don't want to be like all the other guys in the fitness industry or the other women in the fitness industry. I don't want to be like all the other authors. When I used to show up for we used to have to go to these meetings about every so at the university. I didn't look like all the other professors or whatever we were called at the time, depending on the school. I'd walk in the room and, people used to think I was like with the security contingent or something. The other day, I in a podcast, I said, ordinary people like leaves in the trees. This is a quote from L. Frank Baum. And I forgot to mention that great line, they just die and they fall off. I like the extraordinary ones. And I think when I talk about John, I think what makes John extraordinary was his ability to look at what everybody was doing and just go the opposite way and see if it worked. And sometimes it did, and he was very frank about it, and sometimes it did. John promised me, and I will be receiving soon, his training journals. And I will do my best as appropriate to make those available. And on my death, I will make sure that they get to a place that they already know where I'm going to send my materials also, the Stark Center. The thing about John is John kept very clear training diaries from the beginning, training journals from the beginning. John did sit-ups, pull-ups, every workout. John ran 800 meters for time practically every single day. He felt that, and by the way, nobody else does this. He did a lot of, for a thrower, he did a lot of dips, pull-ups, sit-ups, timed himself in the 800 meters. He used to have this one workout where he did 3 200-meter sprints. And as he told me, yeah, the pace is slow, medium, more medium. That's what he said the first time, and he cleaned it up later on. But he was just, he would always be looking for that thing that you weren't doing that he could. I've learned a lot from him. I hope you see some of it in my work, in my writing. If you type my name, if you go to any of my websites and you can do an internal search for John Powell, you'll notice I talk about him constantly. He was a friend. We spent way too many hours together sometimes. We used to roommate up on road trips, and I've never heard someone snore louder in my life. And that's when I learned the great lesson of it's actually cheaper to have your own room. I love him and I miss him. Both of my daughters, when I told them, they were both, we had known for a while that the end was coming, but it was like one of those things where you just get that, I think, that kind of gasp, like, yeah, another one of the Olympians. And I mean that both in the Greek sense and the Olympic sense is gone. And, it's going to be tough to replace someone like John. So thank you for listening, and let's get to your questions now, okay? Thank you. Okay, our first one is kind of cool because our first question today is from Mark. Now, I know Mark because Mark is in my, I call it the inner, well, no, it's not the inner circle. I call it the coaching circle. We meet once a week, for about an hour to 2 hours, a group of us, and we discuss things, and Mark is one of the members. I wanted to see if the Easy Strength program could be used to prepare for a strongman contest. Before I even get going, Mark, I love this question, but I'm going to say this. That is how I trained when I was trying to break the world record in the weight pentathlon. I had 3 shots at breaking the world record in the weight pentathlon. Each one of them has a story. Each one of them breaks my heart. I talk about it in one of my books. I'm not going to talk about the cheese sandwich story because that one just breaks my heart. The other one, when I was way ahead of the pace and the meet official said, yeah, we don't have any men's javelins, but you said you'd have all the equipment. Yeah, well, we didn't bring any javelins. So there's 5 events: shot, discus, hammer, weight, and javelin. They brought all the equipment except for javelins because, that would have been one of the 5. But one of the ways I trained for these weight pentathlons was I used Easy Strength in the weight room, but then I also used Easy Strength in my training mentality. It was very often that I would throw all 5 events in a training session. Now, I don't agree with this all the time, but in a weight pentathlon, I liked it. I would do the first event, I would do it as best I could in the order. Sometimes it depended on who was on the track or something like that. I had to be a little careful sometimes. But as I recall, if I'm wrong, I apologize. It goes hammer, discus, javelin, shot, weight throw, 35-pound weight throw. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. It's just not that big a deal. And because one of the things I wanted to find out is what was my real life conditioning like, and what I began to notice was if I just trained the 35-pound weight by itself in a throwing session, I threw really well. But if I threw the weight after the other 4 events, I would lose a lot of feet. What that did was prepare me mentally for what was going to happen in the competition. I knew that if I was throwing, how do I say this? So this is what I threw if I just threw the weight by itself, real fresh. But I threw a lot less when I threw it after the other 4 events on a hot day, dehydrated, even though I drank a lot of water, it doesn't matter. So I got used to the idea that here's my training number, but here's more like the number I'm going to reach in competition. Boy, that was a helpful thing. I want you to put that lesson in first, Mark. So we'll go this. I have been doing easy strength for the basic lifts for the last few months, and I'm loving it. I have a strongman contest coming up in December. The events consist of a log press, an axle deadlift, a truck pull, a Husafel carry. Oh, that's that triangle thing, yeah. And Atlas stones. Can I use easy strength program to prepare for the contest using these 5 events as my lift? So there's 2 sides. Do you just want to train like for a month, 2 months with just doing those exercises? Yeah, I think there'd be real value. But the thing is, you got to think easy strength. Let's just say you're doing the log press and your best is 12. We're just making this number up. Well, what I would suggest is, not 6, but maybe like 3 sets of 3 with that log press that you can do 12 with. But here's the deal. You're going to do that 5 days a week. So at the end of the week, that's going to be 15 sets of 3. And if that's too easy, or you just vary it, if that's too easy, well, next time do 2 sets of 5 and get a sense of it. If that's too easy, so play around. Now, I know you can add weight to the log press, but I don't get what you consider your competition weight, test it, and then come back. For the axle deadlift, just think, there's nothing wrong with doing 3 sets of 3 on whatever you decide on that. Put the truck pull at the end, the Husafel carry, and Atlas stones. What I would suggest doing with the Atlas stones is finding the one that's the most reasonable for you and do it daily. So you're practicing, you're never tapping in, but you're practicing the event. For the Husafel carry and the truck pull, I would do those last. And with the Husafel carry, so say like you do it 100 meters, okay? Well, try it, maybe even loops. That's not a bad idea. Have maybe 20 meter, put cones at 20, and figure out a way that you can easy strength that carry. Now, just picking that things up is going to be really, it's going to really hit you hard, but just be reasonable. Now, on the truck pull, that was the only one I looked at that. I was like, how are you going to do that every day? Because I'm assuming someone's driving, but you could probably just hook up a sled. But if I was you, I would just hook up a sled and do that with a little bit more speed and go for more distance, because the other 4 movements are going to hit you hard there. You're going to jackhammer that hard. And with that one, maybe we can get a little bit of work capacity on there. Now, is that going to work? I don't know. That's why I like you to try this as early as you can. When you do the weight pentathlon, and this is something I picked up on, I would talk to my competitors. In fact, one of them even wrote like a booklet or something on it. And I noticed that most of them would only do, like one of them he did like day 1 shot, day 2 discus, day 3 javelin, day 4 hammer, day 5 weight or something like that. But my knock on that was, you're doing this highly technical movement once a week. Now, in the weight room, if you talk to Marty Gallagher, I think you can get pretty damn strong just lifting weights 1 day a week if you do it Marty Gallagher style. You have to have perfect technique. You probably need to be in a community. And like Marty would suggest, we're doing a 12-week linear load up. We're going to do 8s, we're going to do 5s, we're going to do 3s, we're going to do 2s, and then we're going to do 1s. And then you got to make that 8. And then, 3 weeks later, you got to make that 5. And, you got to make that top end lift after every single week. Marty explains it better. Could you do that? Could you do that 1 day a week? His blog is called Raw, and you might have to go back a little ways to find it. It's called Raw, and it's his 1 day a week training. But you're going to have to do technical movements more often no matter what. So if you decide to do like 1 day a week, Sunday or Saturday in Community Mark, you're going to go to a gym and do those lifts with spotters and encouragement, and there's your single weight workout. But I think on the events I'm looking at, from what I know, and I don't know much, but it seems to me of that list, the Atlas stone and the log press, this is just me looking, I'm probably wrong, and I'm sure I'll find out in the notes, but those seem to be the most technical to me. So those would be the ones I would suggest doing 3 to 5 days a week anyway. On the truck pull, you just got to want to win that. And then I would say log press, axle stones, most technical. The truck pull, least technical. However, it'll do most for your work capacity. And then the carries and the deadlift, those are right kind of in the middle-ish of the examples I'm giving. So if you were to do every day the log press, every day an axle stone, both reasonable weights, and then 3 days a week do the carry and the axle deadlift. And if you sled it every day, I think that's not a bad idea. And maybe 1 day a week, if you can make it happen, do that truck pull. This is I have worked, and it's been a while. It's been sneaking up on 2 decades. Really, it's been that long. I used to work with strongmen quite a bit, about 20 years ago. And for whatever reason, I guess I'm not the new pretty girl at school anymore. They found somebody else. I came up with a number of variations to help strongmen. The feedback I got from them were 2 things. The deadlift walk, that's when you deadlift the weight and walk with it. And the other exercise was these variations I came up with the press. So there was one walk where you walk like this, the weight's in the rack position. Every so often you stop and press and walk. The other one is you walk with the weight overhead, locked out. Every so often you bring the weight down, press, and then walk again. There's, of course, with kettlebells, you can do the seesaw walk press, which may or may not have value for strongmen. It's a good exercise. Who's going to know? Who knows if it carries over or not? But I think that might be a good idea. So, a couple of things real quick. First, Mark, thanks for asking. That's a great question, and I'm very, very impressed. The other thing, too, is that Mark is on my online coaching group. If you have interest, we sent out a big thing to everybody who's on Dan John University. I think we might have mentioned it in Wandering Weights or in the weekly email. But we kept the group very focused and narrow at first. I don't, I don't know how do you say this nicely? I don't want to sell anybody about joining the group. Either you want to be in or you don't. The last thing I want to be in an intentional community. By the way, so my training system is called Intentional Community. A whole bunch of fun. It's happened just yesterday. I had somebody from Idaho, somebody from California, somebody from Wisconsin, and somebody from Kentucky, and myself, all in my gym yesterday to train with me. They all showed up to work with me, and I'm sure they all left very disappointed. We come together on purpose to be in community. I don't want to have some, I hate using the word prima donna, because I've been called that. But I don't want a prima donna group that's like, well, what about me? I want people who are there to build up other people. As anybody who's ever coached or taught, the person who learns the most is the coach and the teacher. That's true. So the more you help others, the more clear you get about what you want. This is going to sound awful, but I've always felt the most selfish act I do is being more of a giver, because, you know, the more I give, the more I seem to receive. I don't mean it that way, but yeah, I think you know what I mean. Well, listen, Mark, if you don't mind, finally, you've got to get back to me on these ideas. I gave you a number of ideas, which is the appropriate thing for me to do. And you and I can talk about this in the future and make this better or worse. But there's no question in my mind that the more reps you do, the more practice you do, the better you'll be on the day of competition. There's nothing new what I just said right there. All right. Thank you, Mark. Let's see who we got next. Yeah, this question's kind of fun. So this first question is from Tim. And Tim talks about another Tim in this one. So there's two Tims. One's really tall and one isn't. We'll call the smaller one Tiny Tim. I'm 42, 170 pounds lean, in shape, with an active job and life. I've been using your workouts and principles since 2015. And I've been teaching them since 1975. And used 3 of your books. Along with Tim Anderson and others, your material is part of my core routines. Well, for those of you who don't know, Tim Anderson and I were teammates at this thing called the CKFMS, Kettlebell Correctives with the Functional Movement Screen. And I've said this many times. I mean, I certainly enjoyed Gray, and I certainly enjoyed Brett. But, you know, meeting Tim is certainly one of the highlights of the weekend, because he told me about this system he used that he was calling Original Strength. I think I'm one of the OGs. I believe that's old gangsters in Original Strength. And it's just become a major part of who I am as a coach and how I work with people. It's very simple stuff. You lay on your belly and you do nods and find the shoes. This is all my work and Tim's work. Get in the 6-point position. You can get in the bear position. There's a lot of rolling. There's a lot of marching in place. And this thing called cross crawls. Right hand touches the left knee. Left hand touches the right knee. You know, boom, boom, boom. And it's one of those things where it's so simple, you're not going to appreciate it. The thing, and this is something that I've shared with Tim, but I think one of the things that really helps, especially if you're a personal trainer, is that it makes your clients get up and down off the ground between each and every set. And that alone is a game changer. I call that changing levels. And it's a thing I don't see in most gyms, and I never see it with most personal trainers. But enough of that. With lifting sleds and lifting sprints. Okay, so just came to my head. Funny. John Powell in 1983 had his worst performance ever in Helsinki at the World Championships. And it was interesting because the lessons he learned there, I still use with everybody I work with. So he trained as he always did. You know, he trained for like 6 hours a day. But most of the time, it was like 11 to 5. Well, in Helsinki, he had to throw qualifying at 9 a.m. And what he had never done is throw at 9 a.m. And so one of my great lessons that I took to my coaching, and that's why I'm so insistent on orange-flavored, sugar-free Metamucil for my athletes leading up for a competition, is that here in Utah at our state championship, the events start at 8. If you're an 8 o'clock thrower and you're used to having getting up at 7 and mom has breakfast for you and you have a little poopy before you go off to school, you're already in the ring, at 8 o'clock, getting ready to throw before you even get to school, so to speak, on a normal day. So John, taught me a valuable lesson, and it's a lesson you see at big competitions. In the United States, we have that Super Bowl, and it's a nightmare to prepare for. You got to have some crappy pop singer, sing our destroy our national anthem. I am so sick of how the national anthem is played in the United States. There are rules about how you do this national anthem. And it's not, Jose. That's not how you sing the song. It's not how you play the song. And then they have to have the jets go over, funded by the United States tax. Then we have to have a massive flag out there and 10,000 cheerleaders blow off thousands of fireworks. Then when we go to flip the coin, there has to be 500 people introduced. Prepare for that, folks. Prepare for that. That is hard to prepare for. When you say, all right, let's get out there and ready to go, and then you have 45 minutes, it kills you. If you've ever had to deal with a rain delay as an athlete, 1968 Olympics, men's discus throw, rain delay. I think that's the reason Al Order won. Everybody was ready to go, and Al Order had prepared himself for a rain delay. 1976 Olympics, Dwight Stones, who I can't stand when he talks about the throws when he's an announcer. That's a big throw. Oh, thank you. Yeah. You show one. This is the winning throw, and he calls it a big throw. Well, obviously. But he said, I guarantee I'll win the high jump unless it rains. Well, of course it rained. And the guy who beat him practiced on wet surfaces so it wouldn't bother him. You got to prepare for those kinds of things. Boy, that was a rant, wasn't it? So what got me here, Tim, is the fact that John Powell had his arms folded and he watched another competitor practice. Now, I get it. Now, Charles Poliquin said this never happened. John Powell said he watched it happen. That other guys in Europe said it never happened. John Powell told me he watched Litvinov do this. So, if you have an issue with this, call John and ask him. I asked him, by the way, not long ago, if that's what he saw. And he said, yeah. Litvinov did front squats followed by 400 meters. Well, that's great. And I took that idea and I thought, that's really good. At the same time, so this is, John told me that in 93. Right after that, I started working with some, we're always at war in the United States, but one of the things we were doing during the particular war, we were in the 90s, is that we had to do a lot of rescues. And one of the things that was happening was getting a lot of these people who do the rescues were getting injured. And their training was bodybuilding and jogging. Well, when someone's shooting at you, you're not going to jog. You're not going to, So I came up with what I called, I used to call them Litvinovs, but now I call them lift and sprints or lift and sleds. Because I'm just tired of defending what John told me. For military application, it's probably one of the best things I ever did. Now, there's a number of ways to do it. You can do any variation of squat and hinge followed by a sprint. Or, which I like better for some athletes, because, a lot of thrower types don't have beautiful running techniques. American football players, rugby players, do a set of goblet squats at the bottom of the hill, drop and run. And the key is drop and run. It's not put the weight down, catch your breath and go. It's go. Now, that's not the way John described it, but that's the application. The funny thing about the lift and sprints is this. When I started doing these with throwers, the throwers almost instantly started throwing farther. And it started to make me think that everything in sport is a gear change. So if I'm playing defensive back, I'm hand fighting the defensive end, the tight end. I toss him away. I sprint to the ball carrier, and I turn myself into a torpedo. 2 gear changes. Tossing the tight end away, sprinting, turning into a torpedo. So you got to train that. Now, what I noticed is our thrower started throwing farther when we started focusing on these 3 sets only. If you do more than 3, you're probably not doing them right. 3 sets of lift and sprints. Lift and sleds is when you hook up a sled. You do the same thing, but make sure you clear the weight away from the path of the sled. You'll make that mistake once. They're amazing. They're marvelous. They're probably the best tool I have in my toolkit. The downside is it calls for such high levels of intensity that some people we just need to build them up. I mean, this isn't an exaggeration. I've had people do it at a low end. They weren't very, and they do it and they get tired and ooh, I really felt that. But they don't get the carryover. You need to really you probably need to have your hinge squat locked down. It'd be nice to be an Olympic lifter, to have some Olympic lifting behind you. You have to do a lot of farmer walks. You have to have some quality of sprint. You have to have some sled work so that when you combine it, the intensity on both movements is there. With my American football people, I've come up with another version. 5 deadlifts, bear crawl about 10 yards, sprint about 20 yards. And I'm using yards because it's American football. But, and if you can time that, you can get a sense. And as the athlete tries to improve that time, let's just say you're using 100 kilos, 225 pounds on the bar for 5, and it takes the athlete 15 seconds to do that set of 5 in the deadlift. And then the bear crawl takes, 4 seconds, and the sprint takes 2 or 3 seconds. I don't know. So you're looking at about a 25-second. That's really, well, once that athlete gets stronger, same weight, 100K, 225 on the barbell or a trap or whatever it is, I don't care. As that athlete gets stronger, that time comes down. As the athlete gets better at the transitions between the deadlift and the bear crawl, they speed up. If the athlete can hit the finish of that bear crawl, leap up and get into a sprint, their time comes down. And so what's nice about that is you just have the one little timer, but the athlete has a chance to improve all kinds of qualities to bring the time down. Now, Tim, on to your question. Are heavy push presses with kettlebells suitable or appropriate for Litvinovs? Now listen, I've never done it, and my first thought when I read the question was no. But you said push presses, and that got me thinking that actually for a while we did experiment with push jerks with barbells. The downside was the transition. Coming out of a hinge or coming out of a squat seemed to help. If you throw that push jerk away, and you're going to have to throw those bells, by the way. I do it on a soft surface. You're going to have to drop so you finish the rep, the last rep they drop. So either own your own bells or be good friends with the person whose bells you're dropping from 8 feet, wherever that is, But I think it could be. For me, heavy is 253-pound, 24K, 8-rep push press. I can curly overhead 253s, overhead press, for 3 reps. I could go heavier for 8 reps. I do not have heavier bells. Yeah, here's the only thing, Tim, and you know what I'm about to say if you listen to me. I'd like you to try it and get back to me. 8s seem about right. The only problem is if reps 5 through 8 are crappy because you're barely making them, then no. So stop. So maybe the first time you do it, do 5 snappy, right on, beautiful push jerks. You said push. No, you said push press. Okay, so push press, lock, and drop. So on that last rep, lock, drop, go. Okay? And then so that would be my idea. And I would just, try 5s. Do that for one workout, the 5s, or even drop even down to 3s, and just get a sense of what's right or wrong with it before you go to the 8s. Sometimes when we do an experiment, we try too hard to make it perfect the first time, and that becomes a real issue. Question 2, on the lift portion of the lift and sprint, is a trap bar deadlift style appropriate? Yeah, I've seen people do it on videos online, but you have to jump over the hex bar. So it's a drop and jump. The reason we went to the bear crawls after the one school does trap bar, deadlift, bear crawl, sprint. The reason we went to bear crawls is I thought it was safer than having a big tired athlete jump over. But I think you can do it. Yeah, I think so. Currently, I use 2 logs with centered handles and nails at each end to stack plates. I'd much rather you do that. In fact, I'd like you to do this one time as a workout, Tim, is deadlift those and then just march away. Deadlift for 5 and then march away in a farmer walk. I think you will discover interesting things about what the farmer walk really does. Gosh, this is a good question, man. I am very, very impressed with this. And then he says, picking them up feels like the mechanics of a trap bar. Yeah, I have real expensive farmer bars here in my house. I got them for free, but on paper they're very expensive. And people who've done that, it's hard. I'm not a big fan of using them for deadlifts because, so you'll need to have a 45, a 45, a 45, and a 45. And you just, it's kind of weird to get all the weights on and make sure everything's balanced. It's not a big deal. I've noticed that. But when you do it, people who've done the trap bar say, oh, this feels like a trap bar because those the extended handles. But the difference is trap bars don't sway as much. They sway. Gosh, I've seen people do that weird thing you see. Sometimes someone will squat and turn as they come up. I've seen people deadlift and turn so that it almost looks like they're going into a Jefferson deadlift. I just don't think that can be healthy, but what do I know? Hey, that is a great question, Tim. Thank you. All right. We got a question from Tom. And Tom says, I often hear you speak about the benefits of the Turkish getup. Yeah, Tom, I love the Turkish getup. I really, the other day, when we had all those guests over from all over the United States, we did a lot of Turkish getup, some Turkish getup variations that we kind of just invent. We have this one variation where you start in the prone position, and so prone on the ground, but I just thought of it. You could probably start in the prone plank, and then you roll onto your back into a Turkish getup. You roll down back into that plank, or we were on the ground. Roll up the other direction, so you start a Turkish getup on your belly. Obviously, no load. And I just looked at that and I thought, yeah, there's a lot of good coming out of that. Okay. However, it appears that to do it correctly, it takes considerable individual coaching to get the technique correct, which can be quite expensive. Well, I don't know if it's expensive. I mean, my college education was free. I just had to, throw the discus 3 or 4 hours a day and lift weights for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day, and not go to a dance or get drunk for, or have any alcohol for 7 or 8 years. It was very cheap. I get your point. But, I just don't understand why people don't, I had this, sorry, I'm going to do a riff here. So we had this back and forth between Brian, myself, and this person online about all these insights about all this stuff. In their last email to me, the person says, well, I've never purchased any of your stuff, but I sure appreciate all this. And I thought to myself, wow, only in 2022 would you hear that. Hey, I have illegally downloaded everything you've ever done. I haven't paid for any of your stuff. I go to those sites, was it called Scribd, where all my books are, when I just pull them off there because I'd rather give those people the money, the pirates, than, the actual author. Yeah. Proper, everything's expensive. And the thing is, here's what I'm telling you from the heart, Tom. And I'm not just trying to get your money. I'm not. What happens is all of a sudden people get very tired of sharing their intellect with you for free, and they just suddenly drop off. And the crappy thing is all the idiots take over. And in the fitness industry, we've been like that for a while. And I got to tell you, we are some of the most famous names in this industry. Holy cow, I'll read some of the stuff or I'll watch a video and I'll be like, why don't we just, the workouts, be sure to press 911, United States emergency numbers 911. Dial 911 before you do that, because you're not going to have the energy you might have the energy to press the 1 at the end there. Yeah. So yeah, it's expensive, but is it worth it? I don't know if you're married, but if you told your spouse that, oh, don't worry, I got you, the cheapest ring I could possibly find at your engagement. I mean, I can understand why you do that. It's frugal, it's thrifty, it's probably a good idea. I just don't know how good of an idea it is. And the other day I had to buy all new tires for my car. My tires only lasted 9 years this time. What? In fact, the guy told me they were still fine, but I bought new ones anyway. But, I'm not going to send my daughters off in a car with bald tires and no brakes. Yeah, it's expensive to fix the brakes and it's expensive to fix the tires, but it's my babies. Okay, enough of that. I'll move on. I have also heard you speak about the get back up, where you have clients get up and down many times using and not using hands. Yeah, you can see the videos. Just type in get back up on my YouTube account. You'll get a ton of them. I see a lot of other people using it. In fact, somebody else invented it right after they saw my thing. It performed better. It's real simple. It's in 2 of my books, maybe 3. You stand up. I say, get on your belly. And then I say, get back up. Then I say, on your left side. You get on your left side. I say, get back up. Right side, get back up. Push-up position plank, get back up. On your back, get back up. And then from there, there's some small variations. And I can get you up to 40. Boy, I tell you, when we do it at Perform Better, and I have people do just like 20 or 25, they're burned out and tired, which is kind of interesting. For cheap lifters like me, is the get back up sufficient mobility work for someone my age and fitness? The only problem with your question, Tom, this last line here, for someone my age and fitness, but you gave me no information about your age or fitness. Now, maybe you did and it got edited out or something, but is the get back up. The thing is, that Brazilian study about getting up and down off the ground and how it indicates longevity, just like grip strength, lean body mass, getting up off the ground, grip strength, the amount of lean body mass you have, and then how you perform the movement at getting up and down off the ground. These are wonderful indicators about how you're doing. Another one, very simply, and I notice now it's become famous. By the way, this is all in my book, and it'd be nice if I had a copy back there of Can You Go? It's all in there. But stand on one foot, time how long you can stand on one foot. Mike, my PT, will have me stand on one foot with my eyes closed, which is brutal for me. It's just, I'm not very good at that. Those are some very easy ways to check, to see how you're really doing. Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of blood tests also. You should go to the dentist, you go to the eye doctor, you should go to the medical doctor, you should get blood tests. One of the reasons I like to go to and donate blood at the American Red Cross 5 times a year is I get a very short physical every time, and they keep my numbers for me, and I have a little chart that I can go online and press a button and see my hematocrit levels, my blood pressure, my heart rate, and I can see, and I can actually now even step back and look and see, ooh, this was a stress-filled time. I didn't know that. And then I'll look back in my journal and go, oh, yeah, obviously. So yeah, I think it would be a good thing. How about making it even simpler for you because you're so cheap, Tom? I would just suggest doing an original strength movement. So stand up, go down the ground, 6-point rock. Oh my God, I hope I don't have to make you go buy something for doing that. I'm sorry, Tom. I was messing with you. Stand back up, go back down. So maybe just something as simple as standing completely erect after every mobility or stretch might be all you need. In fact, I think for the bulk of the people, that's all they need. One thing Brian Gwaltney asked me to ask you about too. People ask me about a lot about heavy Turkish get-ups. Now, someone's going to ask, what do you mean by heavy? Well, just for the record, I've cleaned 182.5 kilos, which is 402 pounds. I've snatched 314, which is 142.5. I had the heaviest deadlift in a powerlifting meet. So when I say heavy, you have to make sure you caution yourself before you try to one-up me on heavy. I think heavy is anything that you're worried about controlling. If you need a spotter on an exercise, that's heavy. Famously, the reason my best back squat is 605 for 3. And somebody watching it said, you could have done more. And the problem was at the upper limit, we had a mirror here, and I could see my spotters' faces, and I could see by their faces, they were freaked out. So I racked it on 3. If you need spotters, it's probably heavy. Are there advantages, disadvantages to heavy Turkish get-ups? I don't honestly see any advantages. Now, someone's going to say that they're a mixed martial artist because there's 7 or 8 billion people on this planet. And from what I'm reading online, 6.5 billion of them are mixed martial artists. Everybody now is a mixed martial artist. And it's great. Maybe it has great value. I know that the Turkish get-up does come from the wrestling tradition. In fact, it's in the other room. But if you read one of my favorite books of all time, John Jesse's The Encyclopedia of Wrestling Conditioning, and if I got it wrong, I apologize. It's at Bill Hinbern, Hinbern's site, and it's a wonderful book. Tell him I sent you. I mean, it's years ago I mentioned it in an article on T Nation, and he sent me a thank you care package. So Bill Hinbern, buy everything there. And it was just wonderful to get all those. So all my assistant coaches got copies of the book, and one of them, who was a bodybuilder, like, what would I use this for? And I'm like, and that's why you're not going to be in this field very long. And I was right. When you study wrestling conditioning, you will find a whole bunch of the stuff you see in the kettlebell world. These are these adapted and adopted ideas from kettlebells. Now, is there value in the Turkish getup? Yeah. If you don't know who Otto Arco is, he was the guy. He was Rodin, depending where you live now, the thinker, and he was the physique model for the great sculptor's work. He weighed, I don't know what, it was like 60 kilos, but all he had was one barbell that weighed like 65 kilos or something like that. So all he trained with for his body was just nothing but barbell Turkish getups. Now, if that's all you have, that's great. But he was also, he had a great physique. He was young. He was a model. He had a lot of things going for him. Comparing that to, Edna, the grandmother who just showed up, it's a completely different ballpark. So do heavy Turkish getups have value? Yeah, but not for everybody. And that's the hardest thing about working online. We all think, and I know that your mom and dad, they loved you so much and you're wonderful and but honestly, folks, not everything is for everybody. Okay. There are some things like air and water and food. Yes. Do Turkish getups have value? Yeah, I like the idea. There's positions in the formal Turkish getup as you move up and as you come down that can illuminate. Like for me, I can always figure out how my hip flexors are doing by the half kneeling position as you wind out in what we call the windshield wiper. I get instant feedback right there. Ooh, I got to warm up more. And when I do Turkish getups, and we did this Saturday morning, we just did 10 minutes of unweighted Turkish getups. Well, once I got in that position the first time, I stopped and I did this thing we call thread the needles. That's where you take your high hand and drive it underneath your leg. And it's a mobility, flexibility exercise, very specific to the spot. Did that a few times. As I came down, I had lubricated the joint. I felt fine. It gives you some real insights about how your column or core is doing. It gives you a whole lot of ideas. Okay. For shoulder stability, it's wonderful because, especially you have a load up there. I like better is, I'll pretend this is half a cup of water. That's my favorite way to do Turkish getups. Use a plastic cup halfway filled with water. If you go like that, we call it getting baptized, and you get wet and we laugh at you. I think that's far superior than most of the stuff we do, even at certs. The idea is this. So primarily, Tom, number one, getting up off the ground is gold, and you should do it more. And that is true for everybody listening, all billions and billions of you. Up and down off the ground as much as you can is wonderful. Keep it up. The second thing is getting up and down off the ground. There is some interesting things you can do with mobility and cardiovascular work, getting up off the ground. So number two. Number one. There is a bit of fall protection. At my age, the most dangerous thing in the house is the floor. Getting up off the ground at least gives me some comfort knowing that it's not a dangerous place. It's interesting when you're working with young swimmers. If they're in a pool and they can see the bottom, very often they're very safe. Take that same person and put them in the middle of the ocean, above the Marianas Trench, and say that, I think it's 7 million. Is it 7 miles? Say it's 7 miles to the bottom of Marianas Trench, and you say the bottom of the ocean here is 7 miles. They're not going to want to go in the water if they're a young swimmer because they're, I can't put my feet on the ground. No, you can't. So it does protect, it stops people from thinking the floor is the bottom of the Marianas Trench, which is a funny thing to say out loud. From there, the intricacies, you can build up some mobility, you can build up some strange core strength, you can work those 4 knots. The 4 knots are the 2 shoulders and the 2 hips. And then, of course, from there, you could impress your friends with feats of strength by lifting people with your arm from the ground or you can be at a bar like I was at one night, and the girl did a Turkish getup with a keg on her fist. And I thought to myself, no wonder everyone hates us at this bar. I hope that helps. Tom, it's a good question. There is good and bad with everything we decide to do. And, that's just the way of the world. When an orca is hungry and it eats the liver of a great white shark, it's a lot more efficient for the orca to do that than to eat 170 skates and rays. Having said that, it's real bad for the great white shark. So that's an odd way to finish it, but just always remember, there's good and bad with everything, and you got to learn to embrace that. I throw my arms around it, in fact, and just keep trying to find the best cost to benefit ratios you can. For me, doing Turkish get-ups for 10 minutes with no load, great. Benefits, low cost. Doing them with a 400-pound barbell over my head, I don't know what the benefits, but the cost, if it slips, is going to be very, very high. So that's your job. Wow, that's it. Those are good questions this week. That's episode 160. Reminder, if you have questions, and that's great, email them to us at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. I'm honored to have this opportunity to do this. I know sometimes I get a little cranky, and I apologize. And as we finish today, I hope each of you has the honor of having mentors in your life. Sadly, where I'm at in my life with John Powell, Ralph Mon, Coach Lahati, Coach Young, my mother and father, and so many others are no longer with us. But I would just like to say to you, if your parents are still with us, reach out and tell them, reach out to them. If you have your coaches and teachers still around, don't complain about that one day they yelled at you. Thank them for all they did for you. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.